Theo, I want to explore a little bit of a paradigm that is going to show up visually, and so let's see if we can unravel it together. So I'd like to suggest, first of all, that sickness is a specific state of disease, of suffering, particularly unnecessary suffering, and that persistent or chronic sickness often has a pattern kind of like this, where there's just all these tangled messes. And one of the ways you can detect sickness is that a lot of there's all this energy present, but rather than flowing, it's like the more it goes this way, the more it tangles over here, the more it goes this way, the more it tangles over here. So we've got this mess. And one of the things that we love to do in our passion not to feel or acknowledge the essential nature of emotions in most of our disease, emotions being a third of who we are as human beings, is we give all kinds of labels. And so part of this video is a remedy for over-labeling. Just to give an example, I think there's now more than 6,000 specific labels, many of which are passed off as diagnosis in the DSM-6, which is supposedly the most complete presentation of all mental illnesses, many of which are as simple as scientific names for people's behavior, i.e., a doctor, quote, observes someone behaving compulsively, and just says, you have obsessive compulsive disorder. But I think it's in some ways a little bit more helpful to say you are behaving compulsiveness or compulsively, and then you can look at why. What's the emotion, what's the thought, what's the situation, what's the history that is producing this specific or compulsiveness in general. And along that lines of unraveling the over-labeling and just making things a little bit more simple, I want to suggest that in the mental emotional arena, that most illness is emotional in nature, but it's kind of an emotional mental body mix where in the case of trauma, you have a state of terror that is the first, dis-ease, and this begins in the environment. There is something that appears so unregulated, so threatening, so out of attunement with the individual. And that's all violence is. It's force that's out of attunement. A caress, a massage is force that's in attunement. Violence is intense energy that is dissociated from the person feeling terror. And so it produces terror. So terror is the first disease. The thoughts that hold that terror in place could be the mental part of the disease. The thought is that, my mother hates me. I see it in her eyes. She's beating me. I could die. I'm 2 years old. And I have no resources. And the belief that locks this in place is maybe something like the whole world is filled with these giant 30-foot tall giants that hate me, I must be flawed, and therefore terror is intelligent and becomes kind of cocooned now in this thought. Goes from the observation and the reality that is outside, producing the healthy and natural emotion of the moment. I am terrified that this 30-foot giant is raging at me, hating me, furious, and has all this violent energy around me, and I'm in terror of my life. It becomes cocooned with this thought, which is the second disease, which is I'm completely unsafe, which locks the terror in place. So now you have a synergy between the emotion and the observation and the thought, which sustains the terror. And then in the case of PTSD, when it gets locked in parts of the body, let's say as in many cases, the time part of the brain shuts down. So now we're in endless terror. The language part of the brain may shut down, so I can't talk about it. So now we're in loneliness. We can't let in, no one else knows what this is like. So then it moves down to loneliness, the experience of loneliness, which then may get encapsulated in a belief that I must not deserve love, that I'm all alone here, because love is about bonding, it's about connecting, which then encapsulates the loneliness in a cocoon, which is pretty terrifying, because if I don't deserve love and I'm surrounded by 30-foot giants, and no one is safe, and I'm all alone, the body is starting to process what the emotion and the mind finds too overwhelming to process. So it starts freezing up with tight muscles and going into various coping mechanisms, which then tell the thought says, I'm still in danger, and I can't trust anyone. I'm still in danger. And then the body is locked in these tight grips as if it's in kind of life and death stress all the time. And then this becomes part of this timeless matrix which shuts down. It's all very painful. I want to be loved. I want to feel safe. I want to be cared about. But people want to kill me. I don't deserve to be loved. I'm going to be betrayed. I'm not safe. The state of intense pain becomes cocooned in thoughts such as, I'm never going to get what I want. I'm never going to be loved. People hate me. And the pain gets locked in with this cocoon of thought. The body gets locked into this state of dis-ease and pain. We come down to insanity and the sense of basic security. I don't feel safe because people are saying your parents love you, but you're terrified and experiencing all of this. You're saying I'm scared, and people are saying there's nothing to be afraid of. You're crying, and people are telling you to stop crying, i.e. there's something wrong with your tears, not something wrong with the situation that's producing them. And so there's various, insanity is simply a dissociation between some part of reality and the mind heart and body that's in that reality. So if a bus drives towards you and you run towards the bus, you could say that's insane, because your body is out of sync with the physical reality. If someone gives you a present and you burst into tears of depression, you could say you're out of sync with the emotional reality. There's a joy in the person's face giving you the gift, but you're not in that reality with the joy of the gift. You're in a reality where you're 6 years old and desperately waiting for a present, and the gift isn't there. So you're in a different reality. You're in the past. You're in a possible future. You're in a fantasy. So we can be insane mentally, emotionally, and physically. We can be insane all the time. We can be insane some of the time. We can be sane all the time or some of the time, etc. But when we observe, again, usually starting with the outer reality, that there's this gap between what these 30-foot giants around us are saying and what they're doing, what they say they're going to do and what they do. And when this is distressing because it doesn't feel safe, and we pipe up about it, like, hey, you said you were going to do this, and now you did this. The response is not, you're right, and this is why, and thanks for bringing it to my attention, which is sane. The response is, don't you talk to your parents like this, which is insane, because they didn't do this. They said they were going to do this. So they're insane. You're sane by trying to figure out the gap, what happened. And then they're further insane by saying, you don't have a right to be sane. Just as a way of, it's expedient, of course, but it's creating insanity. And the thoughts that add to this insanity is, I'm crazy. So you're told that you're crazy by crazy people, and then you believe the thought that brings this in is, I'm crazy. And insanity spreads. So now you've got the belief that's holding the insanity in place, but now you've got a whole new level of emotion. If I'm insane, I'm really not safe. Who can I trust? No one. I'm not safe. So we've got insanity encased now in timelessness by this belief. It's now infected. These are all viral states that are beginning in the outer reality, and they're coming in to the individual at a very vulnerable time, and they're infecting them, and then they're becoming encased and timeless by thoughts, by beliefs, by emotions that then become self-perpetuating, because you've got this insane parent who's so terrorizing you into feeling insane that you believe, I'm insane. Once you believe you're insane, you stop paying attention to the reality that you can actually see. Anyone can see the reality, but one starts doubting it, and then one is confused because one's not looking at the reality, and then from that point on, one is further insane. And so you now have chronic insanity, and you have more anxiety because you've bought into this. So that's pretty obvious. You then go to helplessness. When you're in pain and you're being hurt and there's nothing you can do to stop it, and you're in this insane state because when, for example, your parent is an alcoholic, you could brush your teeth, prepare the bed, do everything right, and they come in filled with hate and rage, determined to find something. And they'll just make something up. And you know it. And another day, they're not drunk, they got a promotion, you didn't do your homework, you lied, you stole some cookies from the kitchen, and you hit your little sister, and you're terrified of being punished, and they burst into the room with joy, and it's like, yes, hooray, you're such a good little boy, hooray. Now, on some level, you could say this is insane because there's no corresponding continuity between their behavior and your behavior. So it's dissociated. That's what insanity is. It's dissociation. It's not particularly complicated, and it gets rather clouded to stick all kinds of medical words onto it and get all obsessed with whether it lights up this part of the brain or that part of the brain. It is insane dissociative behavior, and you feel helplessness because you realize it has nothing to do with you, which means I'm not safe. You're not safe because you can be the best child or the worst child, and it doesn't have that much to do with you. It has to do with their alcoholism, and you're not in control, i.e., I'm helpless, I'm not safe. Now, this can get crystallized into various thoughts, such as nothing I do is right. I can't protect myself. I can't protect my mother. I can't protect my sister. I'm just mentioning this because the majority of outward violence is masculine. The majority of inner violence is feminine, and that does mostly correspond with the sexes. Most aggression is masculine because it's trained that way. So, but most inner emotional aggression is by women. Silent treatment, shames, dirty looks, complaining, saying nothing but punishing you for days, that kind of thing. That's more of a female trait as it's been enculturated. So helplessness is a reality. I'm not strong enough. That's a thought. I am not strong enough. There's nowhere I can turn to. That's a thought. And in many cases, for a child, that's the case because it's all unknown. Like for a child, let's say you're a 6-year-old and you're debating calling, let's say you've even heard of it, Child Protective Services. And you call this woman and she says, she's in a stern voice, what address you at? Maybe you hang up the phone because it doesn't sound very friendly. This is not a safe person to talk to. Or what will they do? Or will I go to hell because I've been told that you have to love your parents and blah, blah, blah. There's all this confusion. So it's completely helpless as I don't know what to do to get help. I don't know where to go to get help. I feel uncertain and unknown with the whole terrain, and the fear and uncertainty is freezing. So I feel helpless. My body freezes. The emotion is helplessness, and it gets encased. The helplessness in the reality becomes the helplessness of the individual and becomes the emotional and physical states of helplessness, which become accustomed and part of the self-image. So then we have shame. Now, shame, in the destructive sense, is you are fundamentally bad and wrong. You are fundamentally flawed. You don't deserve help support, medicine, healing. You deserve to be punished. So this is a message when someone is punished as opposed to disciplined. What I mean is, like, discipline is, it's not okay to hit your little girl, your sister like that. It's really not okay. We will need to stop you if you keep doing that. Okay, so it's not okay, and you're not listening, so we need to go to your room. And when you feel you can apologize and you're welcome back. You are welcome back, but the behavior of hitting has to stay in your room. That's discipline, because it's about the situation, it's about care. It has belief in the person. You're not timelessly flawed, but this behavior is not okay. That's discipline. Discipline is very, very important, and in many cases lacking. Punishment and abuse is you're doing whatever you're doing, and you're punched with incredible force or shock. You're yanked into a space with your ear. You're a horrible person. I'm disgusted of you as my son. How dare you do that, you miserable, evil boy. Go away, we don't like you. This is shame. This is shame and punishment are about inflicting hurt and sending the message there is something fundamentally wrong with you. Now, that's the message from the outer reality. When this happens by 30-foot giants, shame, there's something wrong with you, and you're fundamentally flawed, and it's repeated, then it comes into the mental. So you've got your physical trauma and dissociation and terror. You've got a lot of brainwashing that goes on with parents, and often children will be in a brainwashed state that is very satisfying to sadistic parents. And the brainwashed state is basically, tell me what to do, tell me what to say, and I'll do it. Just don't punish me. And tell me what the reality is, because this gives a parent an illusion of ultimate power. This is the reality, and that's how it's going to be. I said the roof was red, it's green, but okay, it's red today. I said this, I said that. That is the reality, and no one is going to question my version of reality, my will, or argue or have any voice at all, because if they do, I am going to beat them, I'm going to kill them, I'm going to terrorize them, I'm going to punish the entire family until they are so brainwashed with terror and insanity that they will agree, yes, Dad, the roof is red. Yes, I'm going to go clean the red roof, even though it's clean. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And he's like, okay, fine. We've got everyone is infected then with the father's disease of shame, of insanity, etc. Because it's important to understand these are diseases. They are states of dis-ease that are virally transmitting from one person to another. And in this case, shame, the way it gets transmitted, is once you are treated as unlovable and unworthy of protection by your parents, by the society at large, by no one intervening, and you're given the message, I'm worthless, the belief and the thought, I am worthless, is what has brought about the complete infection. So the state of being treated worthlessly, as if one doesn't exist, is kind of the injection needle. And then what allows the virus to stick is when there's so much rage and hate coming towards you that if you don't accept the virus, that is what they hate. Someone who is sick with shame and feels completely unlovable hates and envies someone who feels they're okay and will batter away at it until the other person feels as unlovable and as sick as they do. Why? Because they're medicating their own loneliness. I'm unlovable, you're lovable, I'm all alone. Well, I'm unlovable, you're my son, you're now unlovable, we're here in this together. It's medicine for untreated loneliness and terror on the part of the parent. In this case, we're just kind of all looking at this in a parent-child dynamic. And so the child agrees and says, okay, Dad, okay, Mom, I'm unlovable, I'm a terrible person, there's nothing I can do to feel better, I'm ashamed, and I'm going to hide who I really am, just like you. And the abuse will continue, but sometimes not with as much rage and violence. Now there's sometimes a certain amount of commiseration and compassion on the part of the parent. Like, I know how terrible it is because I'm like that too. But don't get any big ideas, you miserable, disgusting bit of a human being. And sometimes it's very dissociative. I'm so much better than you. I'm a real person. You're a helpless no one. Anyone with a room like that is nothing, and so this is profound abuse. It is shame. It's toxic, and it gets locked in when the child agrees, I must be fundamentally flawed, or why would the parents who love me behave this way? A child is too trusting and has not been told the parents are more sick than they are. The parent is more unhealthy than they are in many cases, until this set of diseases gets set in. So then we come to rage and hate. So rage and hate, I hate you, I feel helpless, I want to make you feel helpless, I hate you for what? For being more free than me, for being more happy than me, for being more healthy than me, for being more giving than me, for making me feel like shit, like I'm not worthy. I hate you for hurting me, for treating me unfairly. A child, a parent may feel this towards their own parents. A child, may feel this to their parent. The sense of injustice, helplessness, pain, betrayal, and terror crystallizes into hate. Now, hate ultimately wants to hurt. Now, hurt is, I did this, I have some power, and you feel bad. I did this and you feel terror. It's basically as bottled up energy that wants to strike back at all of this stuff. Now, nobody hates without having some mix of shame, helplessness, insanity, pain, betrayal. Hate is a deterioration of the first sicknesses. When you've been terrified for too long and have no hope of getting out, when you're lonely for too long and have no hope of getting out, when you feel betrayed for too long and have no hope of trust, when you're in pain, when you feel insane, when you feel hurt, like this hurts, and no one is doing anything about it, and these people are doing it to me. I didn't start out this way, they did it to me. Now you have blame, you have hate, you have self-pity, you have all of this stuff, and they did it to me as an encasement of self-pity. They hurt me. They want to hurt me. They're sick. These are encasings of hate. Which is kind of a reaction, a deterioration of when these things don't get addressed. Hate is normal. It's natural. It's who wouldn't hate someone for taking all your innocence, all your beauty, all your love, all your trust, all your potential, and ladling you with this set of intense mental emotional disease that is knocking out at least 80% of your joy, your pleasure, your freedom, your sense of safety, and everything else. So I hate you for that. I blame you for that. So these are kind of reactive things. I feel sorry for myself for that. So then you get into subcategories of things, including self-absorption, because I'm terrified, I'm lonely, and all that. When you're in this overwhelm, it's human nature to be empathic, but it's the human condition when infected with disease to be self-absorbed. The absorption is, how am I going to get healthy? What shall I do? How can I have, if there's no way to get healthy, how can I have revenge? Revenge is also one of the ways people look to get a sense of power and restore helplessness. But this mechanism all aside, how do you respond? And the responses are also very straightforward, as tangled as all this gets in its co-infection states. Because what happens once you've got all these diseases is you're now terrified that people are going to find your shame, because then the pain will increase, and then people won't love you. You're terrified that people will see that you've been betrayed, because then they'll see your helplessness, and then they'll know that you really are shameful because you don't deserve to be helped. You're terrified that your loneliness will grow, and so you feel more terror. You're more terrified, and so you feel violent as a response. Violence as a response to helplessness and terror. So now you feel shame that you have thoughts and fantasies of violence. Now you know you're not loving. So it just gets into this tangled mass. And what I want to talk about is how to unravel the tangle. And the first thing I want to start with is a belief that humans are basically loving. That when not sick with these diseases, humans are basically good, beautiful, loving, truthful, generous, giving, supportive, honest, healthy people moving towards their passions, their ideals, their self-discovery, their growth. That humans are basically this way. And that when they are not, i.e., when you are not kind, playful, loving, caring, and generous, you are in a state of dis-ease that is not fundamental or natural, but has been induced and is a hereditary. I mean, we're at this time in history where we've kind of come out of this animal ancestry, and our consciousness is moving in a direction with idealism, with aspiration, with relationship with a higher power of some kind, whether it's in a religious or a spiritual context, that we have this opportunity where there is enough food for everyone, where if we look at it, and here's a good little kind of example to kind of move the conversation towards real mental health, mental, emotional, physical health. If you could create any reality, if you could be any person, any being in any state, and you had complete control over that state, what state would you choose to be in? So what emotional state would you choose to be in? And evolutionarily, gratitude, joy, happiness, love, wonder, safety are more fun on the hierarchy of emotion. So just remember, you are in complete control of your state. What state and or states would you choose? And in what mix? Like, would you choose to be joyful but 20% guilty, or would you choose to be joyful and 20% filled with wonder, or 20% happy, or would you be grateful every day with aliveness for all the wonderful things going on? What state would you choose? And in a situation of powerlessness, where it deteriorates, like if you believe, so if you've caught the powerlessness and shame virus, you believe you're fundamentally flawed and you're powerless to do anything about it, the ultimate state is envy, revenge, and pulling everyone down with you. No one gets to pass go. No one gets to live happily ever after. We all suffer. So that's where it all ends up. When the belief is that I can't. This is why for this simulation, it's really key that you really let in, you have complete power to perpetuate your state to infinity if you want. And two, no one can block your state. And three, you can choose any mix and state that you want. Once people get that they're not going to, it's not a secret test, they're not going to be punished, just about everyone chooses joy, love, gratitude, because that's where we're going. That's actually, as a species, as an evolving consciousness, that's the direction. It's the direction by the fact that it's what we will choose as we have more power, and it's the direction because we are gaining more power. And all the deviations along the way are kind of hedges. What I mean is, if we go back to this other image here, where we have terror, loneliness, betrayal, and trade. Helplessness, for example, is so painful that let's say you have joy, and you can feel joy about 5% of the time, but you never know when your parents are going to barge in the door, see a smile on your face, and whack you over the head because what are you smiling at? You think this is funny? The helplessness is so devastating. It's a very vulnerable biological state. The belief that one is helpless triggers the body wanting to collapse and die, because that's what happens when one truly is helpless. There is no help. The body will die. And when you believe that, part of the body just wants to collapse. So it's a very dangerous state. So what we often do as an adaptation is we choose rage, which cannot be shattered by shock and trauma, i.e., when we are enraged at our fucking miserable, unfair dad, and he barges into the room and what are you, the rage is constant, meaning he couldn't break that rage because he just caused more rage. So when you choose rage and hate instead of joy, and you're in a sick and abusive environment where you don't have enough power, choosing rage and hate provides more continuity and thus more sense of power, because if someone can knock your state off with a look, you feel vulnerable, you feel terrified, you feel unsafe, you feel helpless, and that naturally translates into hurt, rage, resentment. And so what we end up doing is we choose rage or hate or revenge as a state because we can't sustain the positive state we're really interested in. And that's why so many human beings who seem, with their freedom to be choosing rage or grumpiness, whatever, they're choosing a state they feel they can make stable in an unhealthy environment. But as soon as they have control, real control, you find those same people, of course they want joy. And when they don't have regular interferences of people terrorizing, punishing, teasing, humiliating, shaming, judging, not giving as much money, all that stuff, because they're feeling joy. Then they pick joy, happiness, healing, gratitude, wonder, because it's more fun. We're in this very interesting stage where there's all these tangles. And so people don't really know overall what to do, because in all this tangles of, what's a man, identity, whatever, like, just to give you an example, I'm a contractor, and I am one of the best contractors for efficiently and vegetatively stabilizing steep bluffs. It's a very specialized area of expertise, and I'm interested in it, and I used to work in an area where we had a lot of cliffs. So this woman calls me, and I'm behaving like the normal contractor persona. Yes, ma'am, we can take care of it, blah, 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 blah. She's very excited and wants to do it and signs a contract right on the spot. And I proceed to do some research and stuff. But as I'm leaving the job, I gave her a compliment. I said, I'm really impressed with you. You've got this beautiful house. You're doing the film documentary work that you do. And you've told me you're partnering with your husband in that. I'm really impressed, and I appreciate you, because to be able to create and do what you want and be in partnership with your husband and in business and in love and life, it seems really beautiful. This compliment did not sit well with her. because I really meant it. Frankly, it was quite important to me. And I'm just trying to illustrate these tangles that we get into. And it was a really feminine part of me that made this compliment, which is not the contractor stereotype. Now, what ended up happening is she lost confidence in the contractor because of that compliment. And I noticed a few days later she wanted to rescind the contract after I'd done some work. And I said, this is absurd. I've given you a great price. I'm one in 100 with this kind of expertise. I was on time. On a technical level, you could not be better. And she said, you're right. But I felt really uncomfortable with that compliment you gave me. It just didn't seem professional. And I knew it was off, as it did not. But there's a part of me that's like, I don't care whether I get this job or not. I don't need the job. She needs it. I don't need the job. And I'm going to express my joy and my feelings about what I actually do care about, which is seeing happy married couples that, are doing something beautiful. That wonder, that pleasure, that's more important to me than the whole job or the money, frankly, because I have enough money. And that's what I want to make a stand for, is a reality where we're not tucked into these little boxes. Well, I lost that job. In other situations, my confidence or the looks I'll get from clients will go up about 30%. In other words, I'm not agreeing with the code. So we get this mixed message where the joy, the greatest joy we feel, is being loving, being generous, being emotional, being fully engaged on all levels with life, but you're going to have to lose that job and you need the money, or you're going to lose 30% and you're going to feel like an idiot, or you're going to feel angry. Why? See, because we know it's completely unfair that women are paid 30% less than men, and that's actually improvement over what it was before, but we know that's unfair. There's should be and is a natural rage and helplessness on the part of every woman who is treated unfairly. So she feels helpless because she's in a fucked up, helpless environment. It makes no logical sense for the economy. It makes no sense for anyone to do this. It's not right. It's not based on anything. Businesses actually succeed more when they have a woman at their head because they don't tend to be as obsessed with ego as a man who's a little bit more insecure in many cases around looking good to other men because the bonds, the relationships aren't as strong. So you have this helplessness. I'm a woman. I know I'm going to be discriminated against for no reason. And so she feels helpless. There must be something inadequate with me. It's my feelings, because that's when I get treated poorly. I, as a man, feel that. If I become feminine, my value goes down 30%. It goes down in the eyes, goes down in the looks I'm getting, goes down in people, rescinding a contract or something like that. It is enraging because you can't fight it. It truly is a helpless state in the sense that this woman was a feminist, but her feminism, she was proud of being a feminist and she was proud of fighting for her daughter. She talked about that in the session, in the design session, but she was a feminist, but she wasn't feminine. She attacked the only thing feminine in me. And that's pretty major, to be a feminist, but you're a contractor and you're being warm and giving me this compliment, and I don't like that. It's not professional. You don't like the only feminine part of the whole interaction. I listened to you, I cared about you, and I gave you a compliment. This is what's feminine. And the masculine, I've got the skills, and I've got them, in this case, better than most contractors in all areas, and great reviews and all that. So that didn't count because we don't like feminine men. It's very painful. How do you fight that when most people, when she rescinded the contract, she didn't say that, but I had a feeling, and I pushed her about it. Like, what's this really about? This is so absurd. And she was big enough to own it, but most people aren't. Most people are going to discriminate against states without a basis in data. So it's not scientific. It's chauvinistic. It's ignorant. It's hurting everyone. It has no basis in data. And yet people will abandon science. They'll use science to discriminate if it's in their favor, but they'll just throw science out the window, and they'll throw data, and they'll throw economics out the window. They'll throw everything out the window to hold on to their attachment to prejudice. It's sick. It is a disease. How do you fight it when most people won't even admit it? And so this is how we experience helplessness in these states. And then the question is, when we experience helplessness, how not to be infected with the belief that it is impossible and nothing ever changes, as opposed to it's impossible to have this conversation 98% of the time, but there are 2% of the population who are sane, who are not really chauvinistic, and you can actually talk with them. How do you, because the helplessness, it feels helpless looking for that 2%, that 5% of people who are actually real. And so it can be easier to just get sucked into the disease and just saying, it is helpless. I am helpless. As opposed to, I'm going to have to work really damned hard to find the 2% of people who will help, rather than shovel dirt and debris on top of me in this terrain, which is not a helpless state. It's a state of really hard work. Back to remedies for all of this. I'm terrified because I need, and I'm being abused rather than not, and I don't have enough power. So, response to terror, gaining power. Power, freedom, control. These help terror. It's not hard. So, for example, in my life, I took control of my homeschooling program and picked topics that empowered me. I became an excellent cook. I became an excellent landscaper. I became an excellent philosopher. I became an excellent writer. Just doing it. I mean, it was just human stuff. We get good at what we do, but I picked things that would give me some power and freedom, and that would allow me to work for myself, and I started my own company. These are all responses to extreme terror, and they are and were medicinal, i.e. dis-ease lifted. So terror, power. Power is neutral. It should not be given a bad rap. Using power to hurt people is sick. It's the hurt, the helplessness virus. Using power to grow, to become successful, to be happy, to help other people be happy, it's great. So that's the response. In any way that you can. If you're in terror, gain more power. For example, if someone can beat you at any point, if at all possible, leave the environment. Then they don't have the power to beat you. You have the power not to be beaten, at least by that person. Create freedom. In our culture, almost everything is reduced to money. It's not pleasant, and that in and itself creates a certain amount of terror, because we're not a love support-based culture. We're a money-based culture. We're a power-based culture. But that does make it important that you gain power and go back and heal some of the terror. Once you have a little bit of a foothold of safety, reassure that terrified part. You are not stuck here forever. We are going to get out, and you don't deserve this. That's very, very important. Anyway, that's the response. Loneliness, deep bonding, deep, honest, integrous bonding is a response to loneliness. I have felt desperate, aching loneliness around this whole sickness and virus, and the complete unwillingness of anyone bigger than me as I was younger, being able, willing, and courageous enough to either talk about it, acknowledge it, take a stand for it. So I was completely betrayed and sold out into an insane and lonely world of abuse by every big person around me who refused to even acknowledge it, and who shamed and humiliated me for acknowledging it myself. So this was a dis-ease on many levels, but the response is very clear. As soon as, leave home, start a business, grow, study meditation, do healing, etc., do belief work and all that to start. The beliefs and the thoughts are important to bring these back to raw feelings, because loneliness, no one is honoring me, no one is acknowledging me, no one is giving me love right now, no one is connected with me. Everyone is pretending that my deepest ache and agony doesn't even exist. This is loneliness in the present. Loneliness, the disease, as opposed to the emotional feeling, is I'm unworthy of love, or I would be loved. I will be alone and lonely forever. No one will love me because I'm not lovable. That's the disease of loneliness, and that's become viral, meaning once I'm in that state where I feel lonely, I am lonely, and I believe it will go on forever because I'm bad, because that was the thought virus given to me by my parents, then I'm sick, and who would even approach a loving bond? But that is the courageous, necessary approach, is I am going to create the most intense, loving, powerful, deep bonds, love, intimacy, trust. I'm going to create that with specific human beings who are not so sick with their own loneliness that they cannot create it. I'm going to create it with those people. And I have done that to varying degrees. And it's a very vulnerable, it's a very painful thing also to reach the point where someone doesn't believe in the love or in themselves, or that they can really be loved, and chooses to be lonely and step away because they don't believe they can ultimately be loved, so they don't give another person the chance. They've caught the disease. And then they're giving it to others because, for example, as I've had so many women who I've tried to love, not believe that I would love them, and thus abandon me, it reinforced many times the belief that I was unlovable and lonely and would be lonely forever. Again, rather than buying into the complete sickness of the belief, I will be alone and lonely forever, and I'm not talking about that you can't get rich and have a trophy partner and all that. There's plenty of married people that are completely lonely because they don't share the parts of themselves that they feel are unlovable, and so they feel just as unlovable in the marriage, and they're not loved because they don't give the other person a chance, or sometimes they do and they're not loved by that person because that person has the loneliness virus and does not believe they're loved and could be loved either, and so has scorn and disgust for those parts in their partner. So there's plenty of relationships that look good or are for appearances. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really sharing everything with one's partner and letting in that it's possible that there's a small percentage of people that truly are courageous, honest, brave, big enough to love who we are, and passionately pursuing that. It heals loneliness, and it's so important, and it's very straightforward. Loneliness, love, intimacy, trust, deep love. You can't hold the belief because it shatters the belief, it shatters the experience. So that's the response. Betrayal, integrity. The betrayal virus is quite intense. Call you later. How you doing? I don't want to hear how you're doing. Come on over, let's get together. What are you doing here at my house? I'll always be there for you. Well, I wanted to play my video game. Tell me how you feel. I really want to know. That's how you feel? The betrayal virus is thick and dense throughout the culture. Again, the belief is I'm not worth fighting for, I'm useless, it's completely helpless. The health is I'm worth fighting for, and I'm going to find those very few people who have complete integrity, or 98%, whatever, and we're going to have a relationship based on the commitment of healthy integrity in all our relationship, and that's what comes first. Is that what you want too? Are you willing to do, walk that talk? It takes time. These are not shallow, casual relationships. 4 hours to 24 hours a day is about what it takes to have a really high integrous, intimate, deeply loving, trusting relationship, particularly when one or both people has a strong history of abuse, because it's very hard to trust. It's very hard to open us. So it takes patience and love and time and deep immersion with someone else. So integrity and calling stuff what it is. You said you'd be here and we agreed that you'd call if you were more than 10 minutes late. You haven't called. You're not a bad person. Let's not go to that disease. But what's going on here? Do you believe that you're a bad person? Are you believing that I'm going to leave you and so you're kind of doing all the things that are irritating? What is it? And with people that have the courage to face these diseases, we come back to integrity. With other people, the integrous thing, if I'm committed to healing betrayal, is to leave those relationships. To say, I'm sorry, our agreement is this, 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 and this. You're not doing that. You're not responding in the way that you've agreed to respond. It's not getting better because you're not responding. On some level, you can't or won't do this, but let's be honest about that. And if you want a permissive relationship, there's plenty of them out there. Go be with these other people. And that's an ending based on integrity. Pain. There's a lot of pain. Because even if you want joy and love and care, when you see and know children are being abused every day, these diseases are being passed on to a new generation. They are painful. Those children have done nothing wrong. And the effects are going to be with them for a lifetime, statistically. It's painful. It's very painful. But the pain becomes a disease if there's nothing I can do, I can't do anything at all, I'm not going to respond, blah, blah, blah. Responding to pain, like this hurts, like it hurts that children are being hurt day by day. So what can I do? I'm going to give some money to a charity for children. I'm going to play with the next child. I'm going to give more when I see people in need. The pain is a little lower. At least I'm not at least I'm not harboring that complete insensitivity and have pain around that. I can still have pain that other people are so numb. Pain is not the enemy, it's a teacher. The key is not to believe that pain is because we're bad or inevitable. It is a process of healing the gap between what we really want and what we're living and experiencing. And pain is something that needs to be broken out area by area and responded to in bit-sized pieces. So here's what I mean. I have pain that this kind of stuff that we're talking about right here is not talked about enough. I have pain that I haven't read a book just like this, which I think would be a good book. So when I get the idea and feel a sting of pain, like, why isn't this happening? I pick up the camera. I let go of the pain of the fact that I don't have a big whiteboard. You can't see my face. I'm in a hotel. My girlfriend needs to do stuff. I may be interrupted at any time. That is all painful. But it's not as big as not talking about this at all. So this little video is now done. And it's not bothering me that nobody's not talking about this, because at least I'm talking about it today. And so that's a tiny little bit. And it felt painful to rush to go to our buffet breakfast when I just had the most beautiful lovemaking with my girlfriend. And I want to stay in that energy. And so it's painful to rush to the buffet. So I called the restaurant, would you mind bringing all that food to our room? Not charging us a mammoth amount. Okay, done. So it's responding. I'm a little dirty. Let's have a nice bath together so we're staying bonding, and so it's just responding to what's not working, doing something about it. This is where the masculine, I think, has a really positive role. Doing something and honoring it and saying, yes, thank you. Okay, there's our... So pain is about breaking things into small boxes, doing something, honoring what's being done, and honoring that it's not absolute. There's a lot of things there's a big gap between all that I want, the reality, and the world I'd like to live in and what I actually live in. And my job is day by day to do something about that. And pain gets a little smaller. It doesn't become just this like nothing's ever going to work out kind of feeling. Insanity gets healed with integrity. So the first thing you need is intimacy. Because if you don't have intimacy, people can lie and it can mess with things. It's like, I often tell women, for example, you have a relationship with a boyfriend, or you had a relationship with a boyfriend where you texted 10 to 30 minutes a day and then saw each other a few times a month. Well, that doesn't, in my mind, categorize as a boyfriend. I mean, it's a friend, it's a boy, but you don't really own that man. And I'd be suspicious if any man who says they want a real intimate relationship says that that's it. Because you don't have into me see. You don't have real depth of understanding. There's so much you don't know about the thoughts, about the activities, about what you thought about those activities, about what you felt about those thoughts. There's just so much you don't know. One could easily have, 10 relationships like that, 10 partners, and none of them would have any basis of knowing the others because There's just huge gaps in time and knowledge. So you need intimacy. You need to be spending time together. And then when you're spending time together, a clear pattern will emerge. I said this and this and this and this and this. I did half of it. I said this, and this. I did half of it. I said this, and this. I did half of it. I say I feel this. My actions are this. And then you can say, okay, this person has 50% integrity. And in an integrity relationship or an intimate relationship about integrity, where you're actually talking, you can say, look, I trust you 50%, because reality is, look at the data, let's be real, let's at least be intimate about the lack of integrity. You do what you say you will do 50% of the time. Now, why on earth would that change unless, have you got more time to do the things, or are you going to start saying you're going to do less? Like, what would change to help you get back in integrity? If the person just gets angry and defensive, you know nothing will change, because they're defending the lack of integrity. If they say, you're right, I feel small, I feel helpless, I feel ashamed, I feel I should be doing all these things and I just don't know how to get it done, now you've got some real response. You can say, okay, thanks for that, but let's take a look at this. I don't think you have the hours in the day to do all these things. So the should is not scientifically based. I mean, you can't should to your body to do more than you can do. But could you, for example, like just here's some ways I've freed up time in myself. I've automated my house 80% so that I can travel without worrying. And I've hired a housekeeper 1 hour a day, which gives me back an hour that chronic fatigue took away from me. So my business has been able to stay just as productive as before, even though I've lost an hour a day to chronic fatigue in recent years. More than that. But the business has grown because I've simultaneously hired and delegated more, et cetera, et cetera. So this has integrity, meaning a sane person would look at that and say, that could work. Let's give it a try and let's see. And then let's be honest with the results, as opposed to, I hired a housekeeper and now I'm doing twice as much housework because she makes so many mistakes and I'm spending all my time talking with her. Nope, I hired a housekeeper. I now arrive home to a clean house and it's working. So this is integrity. And anyone who can trust their observation and talk about it can get that with another person. Or if there's anger, etc., just let that person go. They're not ready for integrity. And work really hard to find that 2% who's really willing and able to heal loneliness with deep love, intimacy, and trust. Helplessness. I feel immensely helpless when people don't communicate, don't do this, don't do that, and the other, and I'm just left and I want to make a decision and nobody's answering. So respond. So I make sure people know this is a big deal. 1, I pick people who are good communicators. 2, I will support them. Like, if someone doesn't have the money to have a reliable cell phone, I might buy them a phone. If someone's running out of battery in their cell phone, I might buy them a battery pack. If they have the money and they're just not thinking, I'll say, buy a battery pack, keep one in your car, keep one here. Do not run out of power and say, oh, my battery was low, that's why I'm late an hour and didn't tell you. Do something. Have a battery pack, so that I'm not left, because helplessness has a residual feeling. It's hard to heal when there's an element of PTSD, because it's still there. Those feelings are still there. And so the reality needs to kind of fight it every day and remind that I'm not totally helpless. I just have to work hard to find the help, and I have to sometimes help other people so they can help me and do stuff about it. Again, shame, the shame of being, goes back to that belief. I am a good person. I'm a loving person. By the way, I'm just zipping through this so my girlfriend and I can eat breakfast. So I'm a great person. I'm not going to accept any message that says that I am fundamentally disgusting or anything like that. I'm not going to accept that message. I'm not going to give that message. I'm going to do as much as I can that I'm proud of, moving towards my character and my ideals, and I'll use discipline, and there will be consequences, you know? You said you're going to ship me this. I said I was going to buy from you. I gave you the money. You didn't ship it. I'm not going to buy from you again. That's the consequence. I'm not going to say you're a miserable human being and a horrible person. Maybe your grandmother's sick and you're desperate and you don't know how to heal in a culture where you don't get medical support and you're desperate. Maybe you're breaking your integrity with me to take integrity with your grandmother. It's a real art form to bring integrity in all the areas of our life that are important, but I'm not going to buy from you again, etc. Healing hate and rage often has to do with responding to this, because you don't have hate and rage when you've healed terror, loneliness, betrayal, pain, insanity. You have happiness, gratitude. There's a lot of great things in life. So what I hope, in essence, that I've shared is, first of all, we need to untangle the tangle so that we don't get co-infections. Pneumonia leading to a flu leading to, lower immune system leading to this, and all this. It's really easy to get chronically and desperately sick in all this. Straighten the lines out, work at one thing at a time, go back to that belief. We're basically good human beings. It's not your fault if you're sick. You were infected. But you do have some degree, depending on your environment, to fight the infection. And you are worth it, even if every single person is too much of an idiot or too infected themselves to show up for you and show you that you're worth it. You are worth it. Everyone has the same amount of worth. Everyone has the same amount of potential. Everyone is divinely loved. And this is a big healing medicine for all this shame and stuff. People are often not big enough to take it. You tell some parent who's a superhuman being or some blah, 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 and tell them their mistake, and they'll just hide it, refuse to apologize, not honor. They're not big enough. Give it to that divine consciousness that is 100% loving, but paradoxically does not interfere at all or have a physical expression, meaning you're not being punished. This was not God's plan. This is a human playground, but we can let in the healing of divine love, that at least on some levels there's true sanity, true integrity, true love, unconditional love, which is certainly not human. Just ask someone who is unconditionally loving how loving they feel to the politician they hate. And suddenly, yeah, I'm unconditionally loving to you on the condition you're not George Bush, or you're not Hillary Clinton, or you're not Donald Trump. That's not unconditional love. That's massively conditional. How much more conditional can you be that I only love you on condition that you are you? That is conditional, and that can change. Now you're sick, I don't love you anymore. Now people are not unconditionally loving, and it's important to unravel the insanity around that from people who are incredibly judgmental and telling you how unconditionally loving they are. Just unravel that. Unravel the insanity, see it for what it is. If they can't deal with it themselves, consider letting them go. Come back to the sanity. This all is part of my healing, and thank you for being a part of it.